we're gonna get into it right here, right now. We are loaded in. Of course, jagged mod. There's going to be a lot of things to talk about on this one, but just to get the introductions in the top right, we have the red Infernal. It is NightPhoenix who's facing off against the blue Vanguard in the bottom. That is Mixu mixing it up, doing all sorts of fun stuff. But I have to, we just have to say it. We have to address it because it's happened a lot. Well, a lot of the games on this map, Behemoth, but the Infernal build that revolves around the early catapult push is something we're going to need to keep our eyes open for.
Yeah, and especially, actually, I was talking to some players last night, and thank you, Kiris, who showed this off on a different map, actually, yesterday, I think, in one of the games that you cast. But specifically for the melee creeps on some maps, there's a spot that you can find where you can just stick your gaunt there. And they're going to go kite back and forth and rally back and forth, and they're never going to hit your gaunt, and you don't have to micro at all, and it's just going to sit there. There's perfect least range. You might be able to do this with an Exo as well, but again, Exos are a little bit later in the tech. And that it doesn't necessarily impact the catapult rush as much because, again, the single gaunt does not do a ton of damage to these catapults, and you have to deal with the deer as well, the rocket deer that can maybe aggro onto it a little bit. But it does add kind of one extra layer of efficiency that Infernal players may be looking for. Now, of course, Mixu on the other side, he's doing the other thing that Vanguard players have been doing a ton of. You don't stick on your one scout and go from there. No, you get 2, you get 3, you get up to 6 or 8. You get Beryllium Claws, you get Grinding Gears, and you just really try to punish all the Gaunts, all the Fiends, all the Imps on the map. Because as much as we can talk about this push and the desire to get a catapult, Nate, each Gaunt is 15 Therium. It's really expensive here in the early game for the Infernal player. Yeah,
double conclave opener for the Gaunts versus when the potential for that dog build, especially when you get the upgrade early on, can get really nasty because it's a snowball either side. If the Gaunts are able to get picks on the dogs, then of course it's always nice to have the Fiends and get a little bit of extra action when you do get that chance to go out on the map. But if the dogs take away that power, they go back, get repaired, right? Manage to maintain that map control, then it just gets progressively more tough, especially since it is just a lot of Gaunts for the opening and then going to take the expand. So we're seeing, at least for the Infernal side, more of a, I guess you would call it a macro type opener. He opens with the defense setup for that, and we're actually going to see it be the Vanguard player making a move for the siege camp early. Is that what we're seeing here, Behemoth? I love the sentry post. He's got the Bob in there, so it heals all the dogs first, and then I'm assuming we're going to get the Lancer in there.
That would be my assumption as well. And of course, well, with the Lancer, you can splash just like a Gaunt can, and actually does a little bit more damage.
And just repair it.
There we go. Although I think, right, so I imagine you would want to target the Rocketeer down with your scouts instead of the chickens at first, just because the deer are light units and the chickens are not, so you get a little bit more damage. But regardless, he's targeting it down. The Rocketeer will fall. The chickens are going to fall pretty quickly thereafter. And in the middle of the map, I guess we can call them trees, even if they are rock fires or something.
Functionally.
It's the petrified forest. I don't know if you've ever been out to New Mexico, but that's exactly as the Imps doing it. Oh no!
As they say, is that technically correct is the best kind of correct. So I mean, in a roundabout sort of way, you could imagine them to basically be trees. They serve the same purpose, and now the catapult comes across. So I've definitely not seen Vanguard do a dog catapult push. This is a new one for me, and this kind of just I'm just going to use this to say. I don't have any deep analysis for this, but man, this is kind of why I was excited to cast Mixu, getting to see his games, because this is exactly the kind of stuff that he's been busting out. I don't know how much he can get done here, but we're about to see it. A lot of Gaunts coming in on the left side.
You have to remember, the splits are going to be pretty nice from the Gaunts to start. The catapult actually doesn't do any friendly fire damage. It looks like his Natless. It's not. So you can just dive on top of the Gaunts, try to lock them in place as the shots go down, and the catapult will die. Absolutely. In fact, not just the catapult. Every single unit that Mixu had on the other side of the map is going to get shut down. No veterancy bonuses, nothing like that. And actually, Mixu, you got to pull that one back there, bud. That Lancer, they're important. You do want to make sure you maintain just about as high of a count as you can early on, especially against these pushes. Because at this point, well... yeah.
So was it a little adventurous? It seemed like this is, especially considering the opener he did. Hopefully this pun lands, but it feels like the dog, caught the mailman and wasn't really exactly ready for actually having that catapult with the push. Just wasn't able to execute and get it done the way he was hoping versus that many gaunts. So it kind of turns on the back foot now, where all of those units he lost, he's got a couple of the extra fiends to roll with here. So the catapult's going to come up, and the shoe is on the other foot as we swing it right back on Jagged Maw.
Well, the one bit of advantage here for Mixu doing this, even if it didn't actually go and kill, is the fact that there's only one catapult in this push. We're not seeing our Infernal player go and try to take the second one as well. And I mean, these saw blades are bouncing here, Nate. They're not going to get. Oh, they bounced on the effigy. So actually, there's no shroud to buffer this push anymore. Now, we did see one sentry post go down, absolutely. But there's this second one here on the high ground. The repairs are really solid, diving in, diving out. But you actually can't go a little bit too far. The sentry post will fall because, well, the bobs are all about 50% HP and they're all infested. You really don't want to lose those because, wow, at this point, a level 2 Lancer is very strong. Once the feed starts to spam around, it can really turn things.
This catapult play we've seen be defining for this map, and perhaps that was the reason why it was brought in for this test phase, to really see what the limits of the impact of the camps could be, and not just have it be two players mech-ring, normally against each other, quote unquote, but he manages. We got to see both players use it, so there's a little bit less to complain about. It's just interesting to see the double conclave opener going without the brutes and having all those gaunts early. Just gave him the ability to overwhelm this attack with a lot more than I think Mixu was expecting him to have. And it's difficult to transition into one or two things that can stop this, because the siege is always going to be pushing on him if he stays still with any big slow units. And then on the other hand, even if he were to squeeze out a hornet, there's 5 gaunts in his base. So workers are just repairing each other. The push continues on, and we've got a 2-base build from our Infernal player, NightPhoenix. He's not like he's fully all in or overly committed with this. He's actually taken the double Luminite base below his main as well. So whether or not this gets held by Mixu is definitely still a question. I think the natural looks like it's going to fall as well. More fiends spawning, but I don't know what he does, even if he could break out of this. Yeah, there it is. GG. And Mixu is going to tap out for game 1. NightPhoenix, he held the catapult push and then he catapulted him back. You can't really complain about it when you use it against the other guy and then it comes back at you, Beowulf, right?
I almost wonder there, Nate, if the play is to go, you set up the catapult push, absolutely solid, and then you just let it go. You say, this is fine. If I get any kills with it, sure, but I'm not going to commit with it. My job here with pushing the catapult like this is specifically to make sure that I'm not running it back up against the gun against 2 catapults, because that's where things get really scary. We've seen some Infernal players mess around with that, use 1 catapult to get the second, or just take the first and do some, because you can do some micro things to slow the catapult down to kind of play around with it so you can sync things up properly, and then take the second, and then it gets really scary. So unleash it, use that time that your opponent is back up against the catapult to go and take maybe either some camps or get some more sentinel posts set up, whatever it is. Get yourself ready for the ensuing push. Or, hey, you know what? Get the hornets up maybe just a little bit faster, run across, and do whatever you can to keep the Infernal player off your back. But Nate, we are going to have a second map pretty soon. I'm excited to see what it's going to be, because I think Jagged Maw is still a very good Infernal map, but there are other options. You go back to Broken Crown. That's something that an Infernal player can absolutely, they can get into the game a little bit more.
Yeah, Secluded Grove is going to be the next map, and I couldn't agree with you more. It's worth mentioning that for Mixu's sake, it may have been that this strategy was also because he anticipated that it would be a catapult push against him, so he thinks, look, if I can get the jump on him, if he plays a little conservatively or a little bit greedy, then he's going to be in trouble. And the dog build was kind of to make sure he knew that he wasn't going out super early and trying to get that snowball effect going. So maybe he games himself a little bit there. But I think you probably expect Vanguard to do a little bit better on the other maps, like you mentioned. So that's something that we'll have to keep our eyes open for as we continue on. The camps definitely are a little bit, feels like for the Infernals, they're just that much more important, because you can get the fiends out of them, that you don't feel like you have as much of a choice as to whether or not you're going to go for them. So the fact that there won't be a catapult option on this map should take the temperature down a little.
Yeah, although on the flip side, you do have 4 speed camps available, or 2 speed camps per side available. So that is, you're looking down the barrel of very quickly just about 10 fiends, which is actually really terrifying. You're gonna have to be really solid on your defense, because while imps are, well, they're not the tankiest unit, Nate. They do a ton of damage. They tear down structures really quickly. So it's going to be interesting to see how Mixu's going to be able to contest that. Does he go in and take his own quickly? Does he try to contest the creep take or the speed camp take on the other? This is the map when we talked about crazy or interesting micro where you can just stick a gaunt and it'll never take damage and you'll take the speed camp. This is the map where that really matters. And I'm curious to see whether NightPhoenix is aware of that tech, because what you can do, you can send one gaunt on the right side, one gaunt on the north side, and you take both of them at the same time. And then you cannot do that as fast as a Vanguard player, and it can reach some really nice timings. But again, this is new. This was kind of exposed yesterday. I was talking to some players last night, and they were not aware of it. So the span of a day, how much has been learned?
I think that's the other side of it too. Obviously, a lot of players that would be preparing for an event like this maybe aren't the ones that have been streaming Stormgate all week. So a lot of things that people have seen either in the Discord or people complain about on the ladder. Like there's some obvious stuff like the catapult push or the tree cut down right on the other map where you try to push over through the natural. Most people are kind of generally aware of that stuff, but like any other early beta or early release type game, there's always going to be one or two of those strategies that some people will be very aware of. But if you haven't played against it, you also haven't really seen it that much. So let's find out what he brings to the table here in game number 2 as we are loaded into Secluded Grove.
Absolutely. So, of course, as we take a look at things, we have our Inferno player bottom left, our Vanguard player upper right. Make sure my feed is actually good. There we go. And again, Nate, we talked about this. This is going to be a conclave opener once again. Same thing we saw in game number 1. And I think Mixu's first priority is to see exactly what this setup is going to be on these speed camps. Is it a meat farm rush? Is it going to be just running a gaunt over? You certainly, on a map like this, especially if you open dogs, you can start to mess with things in a way that you really couldn't as the on Jagged Maw.
Yeah, so you're looking at a lot. It's more open spaces. The map itself. I guess Jagged Maw, people were kind of like also figuring out that the middle, even though it doesn't look like trees, I like some of the early comments that you guys like, oh, it's so much of this fantasy setting with these trees and this forest. Oh, of course. Oh, if you want to have trees you can break down, then every map has to be a forest. But it's like, no, that's also the example of demonstrating that you can use other things to do that too. I'm waiting for the underwater map where it's just giant coral reefs that players are breaking apart personally. I just need that in my life one day. But the other fun side of this too is you kind of have that island map and the island base in the middle of this where we haven't really seen anybody try to be sneaky with it, but a lot of the games end up revolving around who opens it and tries to take it first, and then how much you can get that open. So could be some interesting use for the Atlas in this game, or Magmadons, which I think if the game goes long enough, you kind of always are expecting Magmadons to come out for the Infernals.
Although when we talk about it, actually, that very much varies depending on which high-level Van or Inferno player you're talking to. Because while Magmadons can disrupt fights and they can force things around, their trample is really annoying with the stun, they're also extremely kiteable. And these mass exo balls we see in the late game, they just say, okay, I'm going to pull back. I'm going to split a little bit. Your Magmadons are dead, and then that's 150 Therium down the drain.
Yeah.
That is very expensive.
The control matters a lot.
It really does. But when you talk about Secluded Grove in the middle of the map, this is also something where we have to talk about the economic scaling of the Vanguard, of the Infernals, because while briefly in the early game, when you open a scout opener or something, certainly the Vanguard player has that map control. Very quickly, the Infernal is going to be able to take it, and that enables a much quicker expansion pattern. So the way I've seen a lot of these high-level Infernal Vanguard games go is it's all about the Infernal player taking the middle, and then the Vanguard player trying to retake the middle, because they cannot allow the double Therium, the double Luminite to allow just totally uncontested.
Yeah, it seems like the Vanguard player makes the choice of whether they want to go for either that dog build into a little bit heavier Lancer Exo, and we've seen a little bit of that over the course of these qualifiers where there's some heavy bio play. But I think you bring up a great point, because for the Infernals, they're kind of going to be able to get out there with the map control earlier, and for dealing with some of those end game units, if you can't get a position where you can kite those Magmadons, or if they are able to set up a flank, then you start to look at some of the higher tech units. And Mixu is somebody that for dealing with that in his matches yesterday, he did work Atlas into his strategy, so I would kind of like to see him get back there today. He had a wide variety. He was even using the Sentinels as well, trying to get the disruption blasts onto the Infernal army to help slow it down. So there's a lot of different tools that can be used here, but I think that you're probably looking at, you kind of need a lot of money to afford that too. It's not easy to be moving a ton of Exos and Lancers around with Atlas drops at the same time. So it's a little bit of that wind up, but it doesn't look like we're seeing anything super crazy out of him. Pretty quick hangar bay. So maybe some Hornet harass to start us off.
Yeah, you just have to be very worried about this pressure coming in because, well, not only did we see the speed camp on the north side go down, we saw all the trees get cut by an imp earlier. So it's double speed camp, double resource camp. The entire north side has been taken by our blue Inferno player, which means that he's got about, what is that? 12 fiends for free on top of everything else. He's gonna get even more. He's gonna steal the speed camp from Mixu here. So he's gonna take everything. He's gonna go up to about 15 fiends or so. Depends on how perfect the micro is. And then that's going to be a significant problem. Mixu's going to have to batten down the hatches. He's got his first Hornet out. It's on the other side. But I think that just triggers NightPhoenix to go. That's the go signal, absolutely. Because, well, yeah, there's a Hornet on the other side. He's got a Shroud Stone already in the natural. And that just means that a significant investment from Mixu is not here to defend.
3 of his Lancers are in his main. Yeah, exactly. Kind of considering whether he was going to get hit with maybe like some kind of early Doombringer play. So now the only Buzzsaw turret is on the outside. Solar Battery not able to reach that. We're not able to, not set to target it. Can give it a little bit of attack speed boost, but the Lancers do come down. Buzzsaw gets a little bit of work done. Effigy is dropped and sniped pretty quickly by the Hornet, taking that out of play. So no quick white health regeneration during this. And I think he's almost at the point where he could try to step back. It's really about maintaining, I think, the Hornet, keeping the Hornet alive and moving it back for the repairs, because the damage output on that is going to be more than enough to clean everything up. Just don't want to have everything here turned into fiends.
As we see as well, we've seen some of the Lancers start to level up, which means not only do they do more damage and not only do they have more max HP innate, they also get a little bit of a heal. It makes them last a little bit longer. So now all the Gaunts are going to die. Now all the Fiends are going to die. Mixu holds on, despite it being, again, a little bit awkward. The Buzzsaw Cannon exposed. Only one of them actually a Buzzsaw Cannon, not the basic Sentinel, or not the basic Sentry Post. We have a lot of money really taken off the map by our Inferno player. And almost as important as all of that is third base goes down. And by the way, we should point out that Secluded Grove is a little bit weird because the third base is actually not something that gives you a third Therium patch. Not the easy one, not the one that makes the quote-unquote most sense. It's only a Luminite patch, and that really can slow our Vanguard or our Inferno player down. But the shield gets dropped by this Hornet. Now it's gonna go back home, and it should be okay as long as it gets, yeah, it's gonna be okay. It's gonna get repaired back on up here. Mixu playing on the edge of things, 8 HP, and of course, well, each infest does about 25 damage on a Hornet, 10% over 10 seconds. So that was very close there, Mixu. But at the end of the day, double veterancy, more damage or more attack speed, more HP, and it stays alive.
Yeah, we see the respect being shown too with the Shroud Stones on each of the bases, recognizing, okay, I mean, if we're watching earlier, I was enjoying Euthermal's matches earlier, getting to see some good Hornet control come out of him, and stacking the veterancy on the Hornet gives that huge attack speed boost every time. So it already does a lot of damage. You're looking at being able to take out those imps at a crazy pace. So just getting the vision, being able to have a little bit of that map control, now poking up towards the front, gets the sight on the Doombringer. So knowing that coming is huge, but they also do they do a lot more damage to other air units sometimes. So almost, not sure if he was trying to bait him with the movement forward to go for the drop and snipe it, but he is going to be able to pull that back just in time. Looks like it's taken the DOT, but as soon as it gets to the hangar bay, when you use that ability to go back, it does repair you automatically. So you can't leave until you're fully repaired, but you can use things like the Bobs or, of course, the Sentry Post with a worker in it, and that'll be the repair turret. So you got a couple of different options for handling it. We've seen Mixu use this a lot as well. You can put the med tech inside of the Sentry Post, and it just creates a healing aura. Use that to win a couple of really key fights yesterday, and that's the reason why he's here.
Yeah, this does become a lot more difficult now for our Inferno player. Yes, there's more tech you can go to. Weavers are really solid against this composition. A lot of Inferno players are playing around with imp drops or just using the implosion to go and knock things down, do a lot of damage to Lancers, because, well, Gaunts do just about nothing. All right, they don't do a ton of damage by themselves. They make up for it by bouncing. But Lancers have a special armor on top of kinetic redirection. That means they move faster and attack faster. But every single attack they get just takes 3 damage off the top. And then there's armor on top of that as well. So they really, truly don't take a lot of damage from these Gaunts. It gets a little bit more awkward. you do want to see the next level of evolution. Again, whether that's Magmadons, whether that's Weavers, whether that's going to be Hellborn as the exo count starts to grow. But we do need to see our Inferno player tech up a little bit more.
Yeah, how about multiple Vulcans, by the way? People in chat are trying to debate whether a mistake was made that they were built at all, but we've got 2 of them. When they can stand and deliver, when they can do the thing that they're supposed to do, they dole out huge damage. If you get them in range of those gaunts, and they'll rip apart all the fiends at the front of your army with 0 difficulty, but the mobility on them is the biggest thing. So you either invest into the jump jets and play carefully with that cooldown. It does do damage when they use the jump, but once they get surrounded or overwhelmed, getting them out becomes extremely difficult. So expensive, powerful, but a liability in terms of, well, the mobility.
That is certainly true, and I think what we're going to see here is that these Vulcans are effectively going to force. We were talking about the next round attack. This is going to force NightPhoenix to level up, to get that Ritual Shrine down, because Vulcans against Gaunts, they have better range, and they do damage and splash. They shred Gaunts. It's actually not even close. Yeah, Brutes can survive a little bit longer, but they're not going to get on top of them because there are Lancers at the front. This composition that has been made, you got to worry about the Magmadons, right? You don't have any Exos to kind of kite away and kite them down. But we do want to see the Ritual Shrine go down. You do want to see those Weavers on top just to make sure that, A, you can abduct the Medtechs, B, you can abduct the Vulcans, and effectively, you can do whatever you can to tear apart this army composition, because if it's allowed to just sit there, as I think we have a drop getting set up into the main base. Don't know if I got any at the third. But our Doombringer in the main is going to start to try to wail away at this Therium setup. Thank you, Vodka. And for now, the Hornets seem like they're going to do a decent defense, and more importantly, they're going to make this a one-sided trip. One of them may go down. No, it's going to be repaired. Very nice there coming out of Mixu. But this is just a distraction, because look at this massive army at the third base, Nate. That's going to make life just a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, he goes for the shield on the sentry post. He has the habitat upgraded for the rampart function to give it that little bit of energy to do it, but it's not going to be enough to hold this down. Shroud goes up from the effigy in the third. Atlas will clear that out, so white health regeneration slows, but you need to be careful with the Atlas on that friendly fire, especially the fiends on his own buildings. And I think that's why he's going to keep some units trying to focus them down. But he will start to move forward, and we really see the Vulcans in the back actually doing a lot of work, ripping the front line to pieces. Magmadon not going to be able to get away, so while the third dies, most of the key tech and infrastructure units have been taken out. We have the Vulcans move forward with the evac, so Magmadon's going to use that trample to try and push the force back, but you see that Vulcan in the middle just soak up a ton of damage for the rest of the army to continue to retreat. And once the Magmadon's gone, the rest of the army can do a lot more, but another one is going to show up. He's got this rally, this reinforcement continuing to roll, Bayo. It's going to be a lot of work to stop for Mixu.
Now, it's important to remember as we look at this attack going in, this is a significant amount of Animus, this is a significant amount of money and charges that NightPhoenix is trying to spend right now to end this game. If it doesn't work, he's not going to have the resources that he would have had just a little bit ago, even as he took the third base down, even as some of these Gaunts have fallen, and that dot damage from the Atlas is starting to do a ton. The Vulcans are hitting high veterancy here, and it's starting to slow down. There is more, absolutely. There are more Brutes, there are more Magmadons. But Mixu, he's starting to develop at least some of what he needs. These Vulcans have to stay alive, though. They cannot go down. They're the linchpin of the defense. They're the most powerful unit here that Mixu has available to himself. But they are doing so much in buying time. The Atlases are starting to get better sieges. And slowly but slowly here, Nate, it's starting to be a hold.
It's tough, right? He's almost destroyed his machine shop too in the natural, just trying to get the fiends off of his Atlas. So uses the top bar shield to keep it alive, but I mean he takes so much damage. He still bursts himself down, you could say. Magmadon pushes through once again, and what seemed like the opportunity for just barely make the hold on the part of Mixu gets a little bit tougher. He was able to secure that southern base. It's important to keep that in mind. It's not like he has no economy. And you mentioned the high veterancy on the Vulcans. They're going to be ready to rock and roll for the next big battle, but it's definitely some tech that's been reset beyond just the economic damage, and it's going to need to get things back together before he's cranking out any more of those Atlases.
You got to be very careful as well, because one of the things that really enabled this more than anything else was the excellent evac micro, to be able to pick up Vulcans, to run them away, to pick up Atlases, put them high ground, put them low ground as well. We are going to see some of the tramples get baited out very quickly here. but you have to be so careful about the Shadow Flyers. We're going to notice Mixu try to target them down just about as quickly as possible because that enables the evac micro. If the Shadow Flyers are here, things go down, but the Sky Mine's going to do a nice job. But there we go, Magmadon's on top of things once again. Again, there are no Shadow Flyers. The evac can start to do a little bit more. But again, Nate, you said it. This is looking dire. We're going to see a Nightfall infestation on top of all the Bobs and the Natural as well, which means if they go down, all of a sudden it's 12, it's 15 teams ever there. And that can really start to snowball things around. And I love what NightPhoenix is doing. He understands it's infest on everything. Let me splash it down. The Magmadons are going to kill so much of this, but at the very least, the Bobs, they are repairing themselves. They're keeping themselves alive for the time being. But now the Natural's dead. Now we're going to see this evac get so low, it's going to fall down here as well. And it's just 2 Vulcans in a dream for Mixu. It's no dream at all. He tries really hard with NightPhoenix. He hits his timing, runs right on through him. And NightPhoenix is going to qualify for next weekend.
It's just a really well played game by NightPhoenix. Great series, and the number one thing that I want to point out is the end of that game. It was a little bit of a slow bleed for Mixu. Of course, your tournament life is on the line. You're in a position where you're going to do everything that you can, but you do get to see a little bit of a glimpse of where the strength and what he was trying to do is. That movement, the maneuvering with the evac and the Vulcans and the Atlas. But that's kind of what I was alluding to at the start of the game. He likes that army. It takes a bit of work though. It takes a bit of time to actually get to that place. And right around the moment that he was getting those first Atlas out, that was when the big push from NightPhoenix came. And just got to give him credit for hitting that timing as sharply as he did. Because if he waits, if he delays that a little bit, and he's on the defending side of the Atlas drop and can't make that push out the way he wants, or he's getting kited in the middle of the map, that gets very difficult very quickly. So really creative, good play out of Mixu in the tournament. But NightPhoenix just clutching it out. Very sharp control, very sharp macro.